I'm Natalie. I served 8 months overseas with the Army, counting down the days until I could come home, sleep in my own bed, and make coffee in the same old kitchen where Mom used to hum on Sundays. I landed back in the States on a rainy Friday, exhausted but relieved, every part of me aching for something familiar. When my rideshare pulled up to the curb of our childhood home, I didn't even make it to the porch before my phone buzzed. I thought it was a welcome back message. Instead, it was from Ethan, my brother. Just one sentence. Don't bother coming back. I changed the locks. You don't live here anymore. I stared at the screen, rain tapping my jacket, the wind creeping under my collar like a warning. The words didn't register at first. I read them twice, then a third time, blinking as if the letters might shift into something softer. My boots were still planted on the sidewalk, duffel bag at my feet, and there I stood, like a stranger outside the only place that ever felt like home. There was no call, no explanation. Just silence from the windows I helped repaint 3 summers ago, and the door I had opened 100 times with the same brass key, now useless, in my pocket. I looked around at the empty street, the wet pavement shining under the street lamp, the smell of pine and earth rising with the drizzle. My hands felt cold, not from the weather, but from something deeper, like grief or betrayal sinking into my bones. For a moment, I wondered if he was joking. Maybe it was a bad prank, some warped homecoming gag. But Ethan wasn't the joking type. He was cold when he wanted to be, and in that moment, his message cut sharper than any distance ever had. I didn't knock. I didn't call. I just picked up my bag, turned away, and walked back to the car. Every step felt heavier than the last. That house still had my parents' photos on the wall, my initials under the attic beam. But now, it didn't have room for me. That house wasn't just a place. It was a patchwork of memories, all stitched together through years of effort and love. I could still picture my mom crouched beside the flower beds, sleeves rolled up, her hands deep in the dirt, as she showed me how to plant tulips that would bloom in April. Every summer, she and I tackled something new. One year, it was repainting the porch swing. Another, it was fixing the fence after a storm knocked it down. She'd hand me the hammer with a grin and say, "Let's make it ours again." Ethan was around back then, but he wasn't the fixer type. He'd mow the lawn when pushed, but he always had somewhere else to be. I didn't mind. I liked doing things with Mom. Those moments felt like hours alone, small and quiet, full of purpose. After Dad passed, the house felt heavier. We kept the lights dimmer. The air was quieter, but still, it was home. And when Mom got sick, I moved my Army leave around to be there as much as I could. When she died, everything changed. The house became still, like it was holding its breath. Ethan and I inherited it together. No fight, no fuss. We both agreed it would stay in the family. I trusted him. I was being deployed again, and he offered to handle the paperwork and upkeep while I was away. "You've got more important things to do," he said. I believed him. I shouldn't have. Every time I came back on leave, things looked a little different. The guest room turned into his home office. The family photos on the hallway wall started to disappear. The kitchen clock Mom loved was suddenly gone. When I asked, he always had a reason. He'd smile and say, "Just decluttering." You know how she was about stuff. But each change felt like someone was peeling away a piece of my life while I was too far away to stop it. I didn't want to fight. I was tired. Military life taught me to pick my battles, and at the time, this didn't feel like one. I told myself he was grieving in his own way, that letting go helped him cope. But slowly, the calls between us got shorter. The updates were fewer. He stopped asking when I'd be home next. It was like I was being quietly written out of the story while I was still living it. One winter, I mailed him a check for roof repairs after he said there was water damage. I never even saw a receipt. Another time, I paid the property tax early to avoid a penalty. But when I mentioned it, he brushed it off like it never happened. I didn't think much of it then, Maybe I didn't want to. That house meant too much to me to believe someone I loved could use it against me. Looking back now, I realize the house didn't change. Ethan did. Or maybe he always was that way. And I just couldn't see it through the haze of old birthday parties and backyard barbecues. That home was built on memories. But memories don't hold up walls. People do. And I had spent years believing that what we built together would protect us. I didn't know I was the only one still building. It started with a casual conversation I wasn't meant to hear. I was visiting town on a short break, grabbing coffee down the street, when I ran into Mrs. Jenkins, our old neighbor. She asked if I was back for good, and then smiled, saying, "I heard Ethan's finally selling the place. About time, right?" My heart dropped. I asked her what she meant, and she looked confused, like I was the one out of the loop. She said a realtor had come by last week to take pictures. I laughed, hoping it was a misunderstanding, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. Later that evening, I drove to the house. Ethan was in the driveway, talking on his phone, pacing like he always did when things didn't go his way. I didn't wait for him to finish. I stepped out and said, "Are you selling the house?" He didn't look surprised, just annoyed. "Yeah. And?" I asked when he was planning to tell me. He shrugged and said, "Why would I? You're never here." I reminded him we both owned it, that every time I deployed, I sent money to cover repairs, insurance, even groceries when he was between jobs. He smirked and said, "You're a soldier, not a homeowner." The words hit like a slap. I stood there, stunned, not just at what he said, but how easily it came out of his mouth. All the years I spent serving, believing I was still connected to something back home, just evaporated. That house was more than property to me. It was the last piece of our parents, and he was ready to throw it away without a second thought. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just stared at him, feeling like I was looking at a stranger who somehow shared my last name. He told me if I wanted to keep a key, maybe I should have stayed closer. Then he walked inside, like the conversation was over. That night, I sat in my car for an hour, without moving. I wasn't just shut out of the house. I was shut out of the story he'd decided to write without me. I didn't sleep much after that night. The silence of my apartment felt louder than usual, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw the porch light glowing over the house that used to be mine. The hurt didn't fade, but it shifted into something sharper, something useful. I pulled out a box of old files I kept in the closet. Years of bank statements, digital receipts, and even printed emails from Ethan thanking me for covering bills. I started organizing them by year, then by category. Roofing repairs, property tax, pest control, new water heater. With each document I found, the memories came flooding back. That winter, I paid for a new furnace because the old one quit. The spring, Ethan called me overseas, frantic about a leak in the ceiling. I wired money that same day without hesitation. Then I found it. Tucked between the furnace invoice and a property tax bill was a receipt I didn't recognize. A $500 charge from a junk removal and estate clearing service. The date was 2 days after I'd wired him money for the ceiling leak. My blood went cold. He hadn't just taken my money. He had used my money to pay people to haul away our mother's things, the kitchen clock, the old photo albums, the life she had built. This wasn't just theft, it was an erasure. What used to feel like acts of love now felt like unpaid debts. I made spreadsheets. I color-coded expenses. I tracked down contractor estimates I'd saved on an old email account. My kitchen table became a war room, covered in manila folders and highlighters. The sadness didn't go away, but it had a direction now. I wasn't going to cry over a locked door. I was going to document every time I helped hold that house together when no one else could. A week later, I made an appointment with a military legal advisor on base. I walked in with a thick binder and quiet hope. After flipping through the first few pages, she looked up at me and said, "You might have a case, a real one." That sentence shifted everything. I felt my shoulders loosen, just slightly. Someone finally saw the years I had poured into that house, into that family. I thanked her and walked out into the bright sunlight, binder in hand. I wasn't sure what came next, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let Ethan decide how this ended. Not anymore. The calls started about a month in. Ethan left voicemails that shifted between sarcasm and mock concern. "You're really going to drag us through court? For what? A few home repairs?" I never responded. I saved every message. I added each one to a growing folder labeled Evidence. I found my lawyer through a referral at the Veterans Center. Her name was Danielle, former Navy JAG officer. Sharp eyes, steady voice, zero nonsense. After our first meeting, she leaned back in her chair and said, "You've got receipts. We'll make them count." For the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't fighting alone. We spent hours building the case. Mortgage contributions, maintenance expenses, and financial texts from Ethan. She explained every step, every angle. I took notes like I was back in a briefing. This time, the mission wasn't overseas, it was personal. Ethan sent a letter 2 weeks later, handwritten, smug, and careless. "You think a judge is going to care about your little bills?" he wrote. "You were never the owner, you were the helper." I read it twice, then scanned and filed it. Another piece of proof, another layer to the truth. The process was slow. Some days were quiet. Others were dragged under the weight of an unwavering focus paperwork and memory. But I stayed focused. Every evening, after work, I sat at my dining table sorting, reviewing, and highlighting. And every night before bed, I opened my phone and read that first message again. "Don't bother coming back. I changed the locks. You don't live here anymore." Not out of anger, not to stew in the pain, but to remember why I started. This wasn't just about walls and keys. It was about what he tried to erase. I'd worn a uniform for most of my adult life. Trained to stay composed. Mission ready. Now, that training was mine to use on my terms. Danielle once said, "He thinks this is about family, but this is about facts, and he's not ready for those." She was right. He underestimated how dangerous quiet persistence can be, how steady a person becomes once they stop needing to be loved and start demanding to be respected. The conference room was colder than I expected. White walls, a long table, and 2 chairs on each side. It smelled faintly of printer ink and worn carpet. I sat with Danielle, folder in front of me, hands steady. Ethan came in late, wearing a smug grin like he'd already won. He didn't look at me at first, just laughed under his breath and adjusted his cufflinks. "This is a waste of time," he muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. I said nothing. I didn't need to. The judge entered, calm and focused. Introductions were brief. Danielle opened the folder and began laying out the documents. She started with the basics: bank transfers, home improvement receipts, copies of emails. Then she slid 1 page forward with quiet confidence. "This is an email Mr. Ethan Reeves sent to a third party," she said. He referred to Miss Reeves as a tenant, at best, and stated that she had no claim to the property. The room went still. Ethan blinked, then scoffed. "It was a joke," he said. She knew that. The judge didn't smile. He flipped through the documents slowly, pausing on the tax records and maintenance payments I had made for nearly a decade. "These are not the actions of a tenant," he said. "These are the actions of a co-owner." Ethan's face changed. His confidence cracked like thin ice. He leaned forward, tried to argue, but it was too late. Danielle had already drawn the line in black and white. Everything was time-stamped, labeled, and factual. The judge made his ruling quickly. 50% ownership to Natalie, plus reimbursement for legal fees. No drama, no debate, just clarity, just justice. Ethan slumped in his chair. His voice got small, then silent. I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. I had already seen enough. As we walked out, Danielle touched my arm. "That was clean," she said. I nodded. Not because I wanted to celebrate, but because I had finally reclaimed what was mine. Not just the house, but the truth. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like freedom. The kind you earn, not take. The kind that never asks permission. The house sold quicker than we expected. The market was high, and once the judge's order came through, Ethan didn't have much choice but to go along. We split the money evenly, just like the court said. I didn't keep a single key from that house. Not the old one from my childhood or the spare I used to hide in the backyard planter. I mailed them back to Ethan without a note. With my share, I bought a small townhouse just outside the base where I'd been stationed years before. It wasn't flashy. 2 bedrooms, a narrow porch, quiet neighbors. But it was mine, every inch of it. The first thing I did was change the locks. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. Turning that key in the brand new front door felt like sealing the past behind me. There were no family photos on the walls, not yet. Just bare rooms and the low hum of a heater kicking on in the morning. But that quiet didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Sometimes I'd sit by the window with a mug of coffee and think about all the times I patched walls or sent money halfway across the world. Not with regret. Just awareness. Like touching a scar that doesn't ache anymore. Ethan texted once, a week after the sale closed. "I didn't think it would go this far," he wrote. "I miss us." I didn't reply. He sent a second message 2 days later. "I'm sorry. I blocked the number. Not out of hate, just to stop the noise. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done." The townhouse smelled like new paint and peace. I went to the small shed in my new backyard, where I'd stored the one box I'd managed to save from the old house. I pulled out Mom's old gardening trowel, its wooden handle worn smooth by her hands. I planted tulips outside, holding that same tool, turning the soil on my own land. I fixed the porch swing myself, not because I needed help, because I knew I could. On weekends, I took long walks. No uniform, no orders, just me and the sound of my own steps on the pavement. For the first time in years, my life wasn't wrapped around someone else's needs or mistakes. I didn't tell many people what happened. Those who mattered already knew. The rest could guess. I had nothing to prove anymore. Sometimes I pass by streets that remind me of Maple Drive. I don't slow down. I don't look back. That chapter is closed, neat, and final. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't standing your ground. It's walking away from it. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is leave home behind.